All right, so we got this YouTube script all about manifestation techniques, and I'm really curious to dig into it with you.
Yeah, it's one of those topics that just seems to grab people's attention, That whole idea that we can kind of shape our own reality with our thoughts.
Totally, and the script dives right in, so I'm ready to unpack it and see if we can learn something new, maybe even find some action steps we can use.
Sounds good to me. So the script kicks off by, defining what manifestation actually is, which is basically the process of bringing your thoughts and desires into like the real world.
Right, and they make it clear that it's not just like wishing and hoping, right? It's more about taking action.
Yeah, exactly. You got to align your energy and your actions and like really focus on what you want to achieve.
They use this analogy of co-creating with the universe, which I thought was pretty cool. What do you make of that?
I like that. It's like we're not just, helpless bystanders in our own lives. We can actually influence what happens, but it's more like a partnership. It's not about forcing things, but working with the natural flow, if that makes sense.
That does make sense. Okay, but let's get into the how wine. The script mentions the science behind manifestation, specifically this thing called the reticular activating system, or RAS. Can you break that down for us?
Sure thing. So the RES is basically like a filter in our brains that helps us zero in on what's important. When we set a goal or have this like strong desire, the RES starts picking up on stuff that's related to that goal. You ever notice how when you buy a new car, you suddenly see that same car everywhere?
All the time.
That's your RAS doing its thing. It's not that there are suddenly more of those cars on the road, but your brain's tuned in to notice them now.
So if we apply that to manifestation, does that mean that if we're thinking about and visualizing our goals all the time, our RAS is more likely to point us towards opportunities that can help us achieve them?
Exactly. It's like priming your brain to be on the lookout for those possibilities that are already out there just waiting to be discovered.
That's pretty wild.
Mm.
But the source also talks about things like gratitude and visualization and positive thinking. How did those fit into the scientific explanation?
Well, there's more and more research coming out that shows these practices can really have a big impact on our brains. Like studies have shown that practicing gratitude can actually change the structure of our brain, leading to, feeling happier and just a greater sense of well-being.
Wow. So it's not just about, you know, thinking happy thoughts. These practices can actually create real physical changes in our brains and bodies.
That's right. And visualization, when done right, can activate the same neural pathways as if we were actually experiencing what we're visualizing.
So it's about more than just creating a pretty picture in your mind. You're really embodying the feeling of already having achieved that goal.
Exactly. It's about aligning your thoughts and emotions and beliefs with what you want to create. And that actually brings us to the first step that the source outlines for actually putting manifestation into practice.
Okay, so we've laid the groundwork now. Let's get to the practical steps. What's step one?
Step one is getting clear on what you want. And I think this is where a lot of people get tripped up. Well, they have these vague desires like I want to be rich or I want a better job, but they haven't really defined what that actually means to them.
Right, so it's not enough to just have a general idea. You got to get specific.
Exactly. Instead of I want a better job, it's more like I want a job where I can use my creativity and have a flexible schedule and earn a salary of X amount.
Uh-huh.
The more details you can provide, the better.
So it's about painting a really detailed picture of what you want rather than just having a blurry image.
I like that analogy because when you have that clear picture, it's easier for your subconscious mind and the universe to work together to make it happen.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I guess that leads us perfectly into the second step, which is all about visualization. What are your thoughts on visualization?
It's a powerful tool, but it's not always easy. I think one of the biggest challenges is just finding the time and space to do it properly.
Yeah, our lives are so hectic, right? So it's not something you can just do like while you're scrolling through your phone or waiting in line at the store. You need to be more intentional about it.
Yeah, absolutely. You need to create a dedicated time and space where you can really relax and quiet your mind and like fully immerse yourself in the visualization.
And I imagine another challenge is that some people might have trouble believing that what they're visualizing can actually happen. Like they might have limiting beliefs or past experiences that make them doubt themselves.
You hit the nail on the head. It's important to address those limiting beliefs head on and work on building a more positive self-image, believing that you're actually capable of achieving those goals.
So it's not just about seeing the picture, but feeling it too, like really believing that it's possible for you.
Exactly. And feeling the emotions as if it were already happening. That brings us to the third step, which the source calls using affirmations.
Affirmations. Okay, so the source talks about these as positive statements that can help reprogram our subconscious mind.
Mhm.
But how do we use them effectively? Is it just about repeating a phrase over and over.
Repetition is definitely part of it, but it's also about the feeling you put behind the words. You want to choose affirmations that really resonate with you and that you can genuinely believe in. And when you repeat them, don't just say the words. Feel the emotion behind them as if they were already true.
So instead of just mindlessly chanting, I am wealthy, it's about feeling the abundance and gratitude as if you already have that wealth.
That's it. You got it. It's about creating a vibrational match between your inner world and the reality you want to create. And that leads us to step 4, where things start to get real. Taking inspired action.
Okay, inspired action.
Yeah.
That sounds intriguing. What's the difference between inspired action and just regular old action?
I'd say inspired action is action that's aligned with your intentions and that feels good to you. It's about being open to opportunities and following those little nudges and synchronicities that the universe sends your way.
So it's not about forcing things or trying to control every outcome. It's about going with the flow and trusting that things will work out.
Exactly. It's about having faith that the universe is conspiring to help you achieve your goals, even if you don't know exactly how it's all going to play out.
It's a really cool way to think about it.
Yeah.
Okay, that brings us to the final step. Trust the process. And honestly, this seems like the hardest part is manifestation. How can we learn to let go of that need for control and just trust that things will work out in the right way and at the right time?
It's important to remember that we're not actually in control of everything. There are forces at play that are way bigger than us, but we can choose to trust that those forces are working for our good, even when things get tough.
So it's about surrendering to the bigger picture, even when we don't understand what's happening.
Exactly. It's about having faith that the universe has a plan for us that's even better than we can imagine.
That's a really empowering perspective. But are there any practical things we could do to cultivate that trust when those doubts start creeping in? Like when we're feeling anxious or unsure?
There are a few things that can help. Connecting with nature is a big one. Spending time in nature reminds us that there's a natural order to life. Everything happens in its own time. We can also practice mindfulness techniques like meditation or deep breathing to help calm our minds and connect with our inner wisdom.
So it's about shifting our focus from that external chaos to that inner peace and knowing that we can always access that stillness whenever we need to.
You got it. And another thing that can help is to focus on the present moment. When we're constantly worrying about the future or dwelling on the past, we create so much unnecessary stress. By focusing on the present moment, we can cultivate a sense of peace and acceptance, which makes it easier to trust that everything is unfolding as it should.
So instead of trying to force a specific outcome, it's about being present in each moment and trusting the journey.
Exactly. I think that's a beautiful way to approach manifestation. It's not about striving or forcing. It's about aligning with the natural flow of life and allowing things to unfold organically.
I love that. Okay, so we've covered the 5 steps, but the source also talks about some common mistakes that people make along the way. Should we dive into those next?
Definitely. I think understanding those pitfalls can help us avoid some unnecessary bumps in the road.
Okay, so let's talk about those mistakes. What's the first one the source mentions?
The first one is getting too attached to a specific outcome.
Why is that a problem? I mean, don't we need to be clear about what we want?
Clarity is important, for sure. But when we get too attached to things having to go a certain way, we create resistance. It's like we're trying to force the universe to fit into our tiny little box instead of letting it work its magic.
So we got to be open to the possibility that things might unfold differently than we planned. That maybe the universe has something even better in store for us.
Exactly. We got to trust that the universe has got our back, even if we don't see the whole picture just yet.
That's a good reminder. Okay, what about the second mistake? What is it?
Inaction. We can't just sit around visualizing and affirming all day and expect things to magically fall into our lap.
All right, we got to put in the work.
Yeah.
But how do we find that balance between taking action and trusting the process?
It's a dance for sure. Inspired action is about taking steps that feel aligned with our goals, but also being open to detours and unexpected opportunities along the way.
So it's about being proactive, but also staying flexible and going with the flow.
You got it. And finally, the source talks about the importance of watching out for negative self-talk, which can be a real manifestation killer.
Oh yeah, negative self-talk. We all struggle with that from time to time. Why is it so detrimental to the whole process, though?
Because our thoughts create our reality. If we're constantly putting ourselves down or doubting our abilities, we're basically sending out a signal to the universe that we're not worthy of receiving what we desire.
So we're basically sabotaging ourselves without even realizing it.
Pretty much. And the crazy thing is we're often not even aware of how much negative self-talk we're engaging in. It becomes like this background noise in our minds. So becoming aware of those thought patterns is the first step to shifting them.
So what can we do to combat those negative thoughts?
Well, there are a lot of different techniques. One thing that I find helpful is to reframe those negative thoughts into something more positive or neutral. Like instead of saying, I'm not good enough, maybe you say, I'm learning and growing.
That's a good one. It's about being kinder to ourselves and focusing on our progress rather than our perceived shortcomings.
Exactly. And remember, manifestation is not about perfection. It's about progress. It's about showing up for ourselves every day and doing the best we can.
Okay, so we've talked about the 5 steps, the common mistakes. I'm feeling pretty inspired to start putting all this into practice.
Mhm.
But before we wrap things up, I'd love to hear your final thoughts on the power of manifestation. What are your key takeaways from this deep dive?
I think the biggest takeaway for me is that manifestation is not some mystical woo-woo concept. It's a very real and practical tool that we can all use to create positive change in our lives.
I agree. It's about aligning our thoughts and beliefs and actions with our desires, and then trusting that the universe will support us in bringing those desires to fruition.
And it's important to remember that manifestation is not a one-time thing. It's an ongoing process. It's about showing up for ourselves day after day and making conscious choices that move us closer to our goals.
Well said. We all have the power to manifest our dreams. It's not just for a select few. It's available to anyone who's willing to do the work and believe in themselves.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
And on that note, we hope this deep dive has given you a clear understanding of manifestation and sparked some ideas for how you can use it to create positive changes in your own life.
Until next time, keep those manifestations flowing, and remember, the universe has got your back.
Absolutely. And don't forget to tune in next time for another deep dive into a fascinating topic.